Very good evening, and this is Dr. Shanti Satish here from Global Connect Education and founder of Rayusi Trust as well. So, today we have our second episode happening on vocational education, and it's a very interesting topic, and we also have a very interesting person today. So, I would like to introduce our guest for today is Dr. Gayathri Vasudevan. She has actually built Samba Foundation with a vision to enable livelihood and enhance the quality of vulnerable communities through education and employability. Her mission is to touch millions of lives, but she has also been extensively working along with the policymakers and also working to build community around it so that the people allow, with the labor as well as livelihoods are actually being touched upon. And she has won a couple of awards, and to name few of them, she has been cited as one of the top 50 women in the business today, a leading magazine in India in 2017, and an Entrepreneur of the Year in Social Business category by Forbes India 2018. She's also been a recipient of Niti Aayog Women's Transformation Indian Award and also been on various TEDx speakers. And of course, like I'm also personally being a big fan of hers, and I've learned a lot from her as me being a social entrepreneur myself. And she's also a member of the Center Apprenticeship Advisory Committee under the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So she has published close to 30 papers. And there's much more to talk about her. But yes, we wanted to cut short on this, and I would love people to look up to her profile and connect with her. So, a warm welcome to you, ma'am. And it's such a privilege to have you because I've also been personally mentored by you at NSR Cell, and you've seen us also evolving around. And there is so much to learn from you from the kind of work that you have been doing both with LaborNet as well as Samba Foundation. So, coming to the vocational education, so it's a market where people don't. I mean, we always confuse with a lot of things when it comes to vocational education. And so, how important with the NEP coming in and so many policies and so many things that have been introduced, like we have the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas and craftsman training scheme, so many schemes around it. But how do you see vocational education in the current scenario and also the kind of job market for them? And if you could just throw some, because India itself is coming with so much of diverse, background, and identifying vocational education in each sector could also be a huge challenge currently. So you working in this space for such a long time. So how do you feel, and what is the kind of statistics that you could share with us? That would be really nice and interesting to hear from you.
First, thank you, Shanti, for inviting me to your podcast. And as you said, you and I have known each other for now probably close to about a decade. So it's good to talk to you about it, and possibly this can really be a conversation between your ideas and mine. So again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Now, if I was to address the question, Shanti, the way I would look at it is any vocational education is very industry specific, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying you can possibly find on a Google AI, but just think very logically. Vocational education needs to be very industry specific. It needs to be sector specific, and it is targeted skilling.
Yeah.
I have to learn a task and I'm skilling for it is vocational.
Yeah.
Skill education is much more broad based. You need to bring it into education. I think in my head, at least, I see that as two differences, right? So, for example, uh, skill education will be applied. So, if I have to learn dimensions, is skill. But if I have to
Yeah.
apply dimensions to carpentry, it's a vocation.
Vocational. Yes.
Now, dimensions can be applied in multiple areas, right? It can be applied in design. It can be applied, as I said, in carpentry. So, assuming I teach dimensions, tailor also needs dimensions. Otherwise, he or she cannot cut right, cannot actually stitch as per dimensions. But for
Yeah.
stitching, you need vocation. because you need
Absolutely.
dexterity. Vocation is largely about dexterity and very industry specific vocabulary communication. I think that's the way that I would distinguish between the two in very simple terms. Now let's again look at our everyday lives for differentiating it. So what I told you was broad-based examples, right? But now broad-based definition. Now, assuming I want to go much more narrow and look at it from a skilling perspective, right? Sorry, if I was to go much more broad-based and look at it from how do I explain it in very simple terms to a young person who's let's say in sixth or seventh, okay,
Ah,
sixth to eighth, when they're forming decisions about the career that they want to do. Uh,
absolutely.
so I think the key differentiator would look uh, very everyday life is your best way of learning it, right? Now let's look at skill. A person who's cooking at home, could be a man or a woman, um, needs to know the skill of cooking, needs to know
Yeah,
what nutrition elements are required. That is skill. That means every child needs to know. Boy or girl needs to know between sixth to eighth or tenth or whatever, needs to know how to cook, right? That is skill. Needs to know nutrition elements, needs to know the art of cooking, etc. Vocation is when you make it your career. That means I'm going to a person who comes and cooks in your house. For her, it's a vocation. For him, it's a vocation. A person who is running a jalebi shop, it's a vocation. The person who's cooking in a restaurant is a vocation. A chef is a vocation. It's just different degrees. As they move to chef, they move to formalized industry, and we therefore stop calling them vocation. So the gradient from a vocation, which in our mind we would associate the person who comes and makes our rotis and dal or our rasam or whatever,
yeah.
versus a person who's the chef in a seven-star hotel is a
So
gradient. But
do we
you and
look
me
at it
too
like
will
a
cook.
skill? Do we look at it like skilled and semi-skilled and something like that?
We would in the vocational gradient. But tell me,
Okay,
do all of us not cook?
of
And
course.
therefore, are we not part of vocation? So we have a skill education, we don't have a vocation. But
Vocation,
they have a
yes.
vocation and they don't have a skill.
Skill.
Now again, let me like take a few more examples and explain it. Right now, let's take the example of carpentry, which I took. All of us do not have the skill set, especially in India, to even put to fix a chair. For example, if it comes in a box, we have assembled chairs which are going to come. We still will call somebody, right? But
Yeah,
countries outside India, this is a skill set like cooking. They know how to assemble. They know how to put the nail and the screw together and assemble four pieces of wood together. That is a skill education, which India lacks, right? Which you and me also will not have. But a carpenter who comes and does it, or a fitter who puts it together, it's a vocation for that person. So the very
yeah.
table that you sit on, the chair that you put, a cradle that you put together, somebody who comes in professionally to do it for you is a vocation. So what I would say is you may know how to stitch a button. That is a skill. The fact that you do it as a profession, you stitch for others. The tailor who works in a large firm or in a small boutique firm or has her or his own self-employed is a vocation. Gradient again,
Yeah,
like the cooking example that I used.
thank you.
So
So
that's the way I would distinguish between the two.
very nice, ma'am. But because since you've been in this space for a very long time, but I also wanted to know like what kind of statistics and what kind of job markets that we have because we have such diverse kind of thing population in India.
So let's look at it like this. Approximately 12 million people graduate out of schools. That means 12th standard, 12 million graduate every year.
Okay.
Now, of the 12 million, let's say higher education has a 25-30% absorption. That
Okay.
means you'll have about 3 million which are going there, correct?
Yeah.
Now, the remaining, assuming let's say 9 million are not going into work completely, but are, because we have a gender disparity, so they are going into work to stay home, neither in education nor in work, right? The remaining are all going into vocation. So you'd approximately see about 6 to 7 million who are ready to pick up jobs. So they will all go into various types of vocational jobs with certification or without certification.
Okay. Okay. But of course, the
Now
job
look at the,
variation will be there.
just
Yeah.
let's like for a minute spend time on those who are going into higher education.
Okay.
Unlike those who are going into extremely, how should I put it, uh, good quality higher education, if they're going into tier 3, tier 4 colleges in smaller cities, most of them actually have a plan B and actually will be at training for vocation. So in
Yeah.
India, the 3 million who are in higher education, there's no statistics to it, but looking at the way we actually look at the skill development and say that it is not a success, I would actually refute that claim. I would disagree with that claim. And I would say because India made skill development so, is
Prominent.
trying rather, is trying to make skill development accessible to all. A lot of the people who are going into higher education in the after their 12th standard, after their first year, second year, third year, etc., are actually trying to see if there is more of a chance for them to make a living through vocation and not only higher education.
Yeah, because since like we have this, as you mentioned earlier, ma'am, we have this transferable skills. So when you're talking about dimensions, it could be into stitching, it could be into something else. So if you understand a concept, how it could be transferable from one sectorial to another sector, it again depends upon the knowledge that we impart as institutions or they have picked up from their learnings from the surroundings and environment that they are in. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
Uh,
no, you're absolutely right. But I'm also making one more point, Shanti. I am saying India is generally very critical of its schemes, right? It's very critical of how skill training or skill education has worked out. They say vocational education has not been successful. So, skill mission,
yeah,
state government, National Skill Development Corporation, everybody is being accused of not doing its work. NGOs who are
true.
running training centers like us. But let me give you another perspective there. And I'm just sort of, repeating myself. But look at in skill training centers who comes. People who have signed up into education come, right? They're not in your
Hmm.
most premier colleges. They don't belong to the most wealthy families, but they come and learn in vocational centers
Yeah,
or what we
yeah,
call skill training centers.
yeah,
In that case, what does it mean for us?
absolutely.
So
Because
let's just
it
spend a
means
minute.
the
That means they have a plan B.
plan B. Yeah,
The plan B for them is if education is not going to work out completely, let me get a skill which is transferable, to use your words, which I can use in my daily life in order to earn a living. So, why are we saying the fact that after skill that this person is not immediately jumping into a vocation but is testing waters is a failure because of government's effort at skill development is why this has worked. So I would actually argue that the program has been successful. That's where I'm coming from.
absolutely, ma'am. See, after COVID, if you would have seen, lot of these small, eateries and small, cloud kitchens, and since there are so many things available online, there's so much of creativity and people, especially women whom you are talking about, even baking. is also a good occasion because people have learned to do that and people want customized cakes, right? So they initially used to bake for their families. Now they're really doing it as a great business right now.
Yeah, so look in every sphere, you'll find this. That's what I mean. So we should
Yeah.
actually think of it differently.
Yeah, the way we, yeah, absolutely. It's not just sectorial driven, but depends on the community and the space that and the environment that they are living around. What is it that's what I was trying to tell is what is around the place in whichever they are living, what is a requirement? So based on that need is where people are picking up, testing their vocational learning and trying to see how they could customize it and then they could earn something from there, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Ma'am, so but we still, this leads to another question of mine is because we've understood skilling, we've understood occasion, so people are also trying to see how they could establish businesses in small terms and all of those things. But at some point, to actually master something and then even to actually pick up a little higher skills or even to understand a little bit about the sectors around what is the actual need, do we have those kind of real trainers or do we have some dearth of trainers who understand the population and then give them that kind of a knowledge to to say that yeah, you could try this and then or because many a times we've also seen there is a huge dearth for trainers as well on this line.
Yeah, see, because most of the people who are teaching vocation are practitioners. So they're
Okay.
practitioners. They may be a good cook. They may be a good beautician. They may be a good welder, a good CNC operator. So they may be good at their professionals. They could be good, service technicians. So the range, they may be good at it. Everybody who's good at it is not a good teacher, right? But the problem
Yeah,
we have, in my opinion, is not the trainer itself, but where have we done enough research on the training tools required for the trainers?
absolutely. We need
So
to
there are no,
customize it. Yeah.
the whole adult learning, experiential learning, which is required for this, does hasn't got enough space in our world.
Yeah, because I absolutely agree with you, ma'am. So, do you think it's a potential space where people can actually have some specific trainings done and develop some specific modules done so that, it can help people to, develop the occasional space?
That's what I'm saying. Don't think of it as modules. Look at
Okay.
vocation. You don't need modules. You need what's the way to teach. For example, if you were to teach carpentry, how will you teach carpentry?
Hands on.
Okay, then let's just spend some time. What else would we do to teach?
We would need material. We would need this basic setup that is around.
Spend some time on this, okay? Actually, what you would need is you need to be able to observe, right? What is a
Yeah.
teacher? Hands-on is given. It's a practical skill. So you have to do hands-on. But just for a minute, imagine that how does the teacher actually know this person has learned or not? Because it's dimensions, it's within a time. So have they been able to accomplish a particular task with a particular quality, right?
Yeah.
Now, assuming I'm teaching 30 students, how would I do it? Can I think differently? Can I put cameras on every student's head and actually have it shoot each one? So that means every time I turn, I see another student working. Then I'm able to do peer review by actually looking at the different angles of the camera. So that means
Mm.
peers actually review each other's work. The teacher also has more to review. I'm talking of techniques which a trainer needs in a vocational trainer because we're very fast to say that they don't teach well, right? We're very
Yeah.
fast to say that there isn't, uh, you know, uh, what do you say? That they're not good teachers. But then
Yes.
how are we even, we haven't developed enough tools to give them.
Yeah, true. So we need to have technology support. We need to see what are the various other things that could, be support system for the trainer itself to assess and also understand the impact of whatever they are doing.
Absolutely. That's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this is a good space actually. People who are listening to us should know, people are so creative about coming out with various technologies, but yeah, they should also think about these lines and how they could bring in some training methodologies. I mean, training techniques per se, which could be easily assessed and impacted. And there could be some continuous process of learning as such. So, but then this sets rights, to the context that, to see apart from the trainers and the material and how as an institution that you have been running this for a couple of years now, what are the challenges? What motivates you to say, yeah, I've taken this up and I really need to make this change? You must be encountering couple of challenges around. You also know that we have I think you also work on the inclusion space as well. So you understand both the ecosystems. So what challenges that you foresee actually, and what are the challenges that you foresee as well as you're really facing it on day to day?
So let me first start with, see, I've been doing this as part of Sambhav LaborNet, as you know, for about close to now 2 decades.
Yeah,
And even in my previous avatar, I was largely in the vocational education labor area.
very true.
If you look at it, I think we've come a long way to provide access, right? But the whole issue of the point that you made on how to teach is
Yeah,
still a black box. Second thing is, actually in vocational education or vocational training, and both are very different, but I'm, for ease of convenience, I'm sort of using it as one. uh,
yeah,
the problem is, I think, it's very fast, it jumps to are they employable or not. uh, we don't spend enough time on actually the time or resources or money to actually spend time on why is it not working. So that means we must spend time more on teaching, understanding teaching learning methodologies, seeing for that cohort what works. But unfortunately or fortunately, because it is vocational training by definition is short term and is not considered cerebral, we jump to saying, can you fix the job market because of skills? The job market cannot
yeah.
be fixed because of skills. You know,
Yes. Yes, I'm getting your point because sometimes it's like once you learn, even they also need to explore. They're also testing waters, as you
correct.
what you said. So it takes time to actually, understand the impact of their learning. So many times I've also seen people who would have gone and attended occasionals when they wouldn't have expected certain things. They would have gone with certain thought processes and joined. And then they would say, yeah, I've done this. So can I look at it from a different perspective and see can I use the same skills for something else or some other sector. So I mean that is a huge challenge. So what you're saying is understanding the impact. You need to wait for the impact. You can't immediately or gratify and say like immediate gratification is not there, like as soon as you finish the course and is there a job readily waiting for you? No.
The job may be ready, but you may not be ready. No, that's exactly what's happening. The
Maybe,
job
yeah.
is ready, but the student is not ready for the jobs which are being offered because he or she is still in an exploratory phase.
Yeah, just understood and seeing like whether I really like to go and work in that specific thing which is offered to me right now,
Absolutely.
right? So, ma'am, like, do you have, if there are a lot of people who are working, and even as I mentioned to you about the inclusive education, and then that is still slowly coming up, and it's still sprouting out in different spaces, and it's there is also a huge challenge. If there are a lot of people who are also trying to say that, yeah, we are also working with migrant laborers, we're doing this. So, what would be your kind of with so much of huge 2 decades of experience that you have? uh, if there ever people want to get into this space and do something on this lines, and I'm sure there should be more and more people coming into this, what is the first two things that they should know about it? And people who are also looking at occasional education and things like that, what is it that they also need to understand before they get into a course? So there are two different things that I'm asking you, of course. um, how should an industry, I mean, a person who is wanting to contribute somewhere and a person who's wanting to learn something from this. So how do we actually, what are the two, three things that they should be looking at?
So look at it like this. First and foremost, I think um, we should look at it very differently. Okay, the space is not considered to be um, the whole vocational training space is considered to be a failure, right? People say
Yeah,
it hasn't worked. So I would actually argue and say, as I told you, right, in my head, it
yeah,
has worked. It has not worked to what the world has wanted it because they had a mirage like expectation out of it. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
I feel anybody who's coming new will come with huge perspective. So don't get disillusioned by the fact that the previous, people like me, people who have tried in this space are not considered to be successful. How does it matter? Always success comes when there are repeated failures, right? History has shown us that.
absolutely. Yes,
So
yes,
you would have learned, anybody who's entering now will have the rich experience of standing on the shoulders of a number of people who have tried various things. So I would only say be aware of what is tried, but feel free to be as creative, as adventurous, and as brave to go ahead and do it. Don't get uh, don't get
demotivated.
yeah, demotivated and colored by, everybody can say, oh, I'm really so experienced. So what? Experience is
Absolutely.
not necessarily the answer to everything, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
that's what I would say. The second thing I would, however, say is be aware that you too may fall into the bucket where you're still trying something. So what? So go for
yeah,
it. And you may succeed, it may not. But if you succeed, you would have changed the world. So I think
very
you should
nice.
go with a very much a film star thought process. Anybody who's entering the film industry needs to know that the competition is enormous, the success is minimal.
Very
One
true.
in a million succeed. So what? I think that courage is what I would ask one to have and move forward.
Like how even if Thomas Alva was also saying that you need to keep trying a couple of times and then only you actually succeed. I think all the inventors who have done through this and they all would have I mean mentioning about the same thing. It's like it's you never look at it as a failure, but at least you've seen different methods to see there are various ways to get into what you want to do. So it's a nice thing. But if people want to really get into the second question is who want to get into the space of, okay, I want to try and learn something. So what is it that one or two points that they need to be mindful about when they get into a course? Because many people drop out as well.
So I think for them it is exploration. It will always be, however much we say that you should know what the career paths there are. I think the whole course to job role is a difficult mapping because ultimately when you go to a job, it's not panning out like the course told you, right? So that's the
Yeah,
reason it's a tough one. So I would say to everybody, try it out at least for 1 year before they give it up. Don't give up
yeah,
too fast.
very true.
If you
Very
give
true,
up
ma'am.
too fast, then you're not there. You're just flirting around with various things like a little butterfly. But if you've given it 1 or 2 years, you've tried your best. It's for you or not for you.
Very nice, ma'am. Thank you so much. So to sum up our whole conversation that we've had is though the job market is a little, I mean, you should not be looking at the job market, but the occasional education is actually a very explorative thing. And it's just people to understand the transferable skills as also trying to see where you fit in. And the second part of it is you beautifully differentiated between how a skill is so important. It's a part of our life. And occasional, which gives you also a earning to what we have, the skill that you have actually tried out, and you try to focus more and learn about it and trying to see that how you can use it to really go into the occasional space and earn something out of it. And also the challenges that you have said, yeah, because you cannot see immediate results, Be it if you are an entrepreneur who is running an occasional education center, or be it a person who's joined the session. And both ways, it's actually a very a space where both of them are trying to see what they can do and how they could actually enhance, to see that a person's livelihood is enhanced, and showing them some route ways and some pathways rather, to see how a person can lead a better life, and also to enhance their own surrounding better ways. I mean, I would love if you could add something more to it.
No, I think you summed it up beautifully, Shanti. I think I couldn't have done a better job.
Oh, ma'am, don't say that. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm sure people who are going to listen to this will never be demotivated. They're going to be trying much more. And even occasional education, people will think, oh, it's not a failure, but I'm actually doing something better.
Correct, correct. That's
Yeah,
the
that's the whole message through this thing. And I'm sure people should also be learning a lot from you and looking up to your organization as well. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. And it was wonderful to, have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Shanti, and all the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.